Also want to talk about the fall, in that we have a lot of work that's being done for the fall. And, I know that everyone wants clarity and answers now about what the fall will look like. And we are working as fast as we can to make sure we do that. We've learned throughout this time that as soon as we make an announcement, that it often comes back and we have to change. So we're trying to wait to give out fall guidelines as we get closer to the fall, so we can get a better sense of what's happening in the world. We intend to release, similar to the guidelines we sent out for July 1st, we intend to release those the very end of July or beginning of August. And that will help us to be able to, I think, have a better sense of what things will be doing at that time. I also want to make, again, I feel like I do this every session, but it's important. I want to give a huge shout out to everyone in enrollment services, and to the faculty and staff that are working to support our students. We currently, our summer enrollment is up about 25% over last year. I think up to 600 students beyond where we were last summer. That's really incredible. Our fall enrollment is also looking good, and so we have some good options there in the fall. I think if things hold as we are, we're certainly going to grow into the fall, and that is very encouraging for us. It's very important that we do that, and I'll explain. I know several people have asked questions about why we have to take financial precautions at the same time that our enrollment is growing. And I want to take a minute to try to explain that. I know it's a sort of a cognitive dissonance that it works that way. But the issues are that when the enrollment growth doesn't match equally to the money that you lose if you take a budget cut. Okay, so if we get enrollment growth, it certainly does help our budget, but it doesn't buffer us from a state budget cut. That money comes from two different places, and a 10% state budget cut will, no matter how much we grow in a year, we're not going to be able to offset that with that kind of with enrollment growth. So we still have significant financial risk moving forward as a university. Again, I will keep reiterating that we're in as good a shape, I feel, as you can be as the regional comprehensive, certainly in the Midwest right now. We're stable. We're in no risk of any kind of having to take any drastic steps very quickly. But we still do have risk and significant risk if we take a large state budget cut, and certainly in our program revenue areas, right? These are areas that are funded by fees, either SEG fees or by fees that students pay, or through revenues that are driven through things like tickets and that sort of thing. We can't necessarily control how those revenues are going to happen in the fall, and thus we have to be ready to make sure that we can stick to our core academic mission, right, which is really, really important, that we have to make sure that the number one thing we are doing right now is to serve our students. So I hope that helps to clarify a little bit about why it seems like we're often saying two different things. What I can tell you is if we had enrollment decline, then it makes a budget cut infinitely worse, because then you are losing money both on the enrollment or tuition side and also from the budget cuts that you could be taking. That could be really catastrophic. So we're putting ourselves in a really good position by having really strong enrollment right now. I want to conclude my remarks just by saying that I'm very grateful for all the work that people are doing to help our university move forward with its work in diversity, equity, and inclusive excellence. I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very anxious to be able to talk more and more about the actions we'll be taking as an institution to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to not be part of the problem. I want to thank the committee that's working with this. I know we're in the process of renaming it, so I'm careful not to give it its official name, and that we're really anxious, actually, to get back in the fall and be able to continue the conversations we need to have to support all of our students. And I will say, just to conclude here before we go into the questions, that it's really, really vital to understand that our mission now as an access institution is more relevant and more important than ever. The educational attainment rates in our region are far below national and state averages, far below. And for our region to be able to be an equitable region, we must fix that, and we must be part of the solution. We must be the solution that allows our entire community to move forward together. So I want to thank you for joining me in this fight and this effort to be able to make sure that we are really supporting all of our students to the utmost of our ability and to help make our region the strongest it could possibly be moving forward. So with that, I think we will switch to taking questions, and we will switch over right now, I think, to Sue Bodilli, who can start asking the questions.
Hey everyone. We've only had a couple of questions so far in the inbox. The first one is clarification. It says in the classroom guidelines document, music courses are specifically mentioned. That statement seems to reflect an initial recommendation about music courses involving singing and playing wind instruments. It does not reflect the most recent efforts underway to creatively redesign multiple courses for the purpose of offering music students in-person components to their ensembles and lessons, regardless of type of instrument. For those advising or otherwise in contact with students involved in music courses, this clarification is important. Might you please confirm this?
Thanks, Sue. I think I'm going to flip this over to Kate. I know that we're still, as we've mentioned, everything that we're doing right now is a work in progress and things are constantly changing. But Kate, if you want to clarify this, that'd be great.
Sure, I'm happy to. So yeah, I sent out the classroom guidelines to faculty and instructional academic staff over the weekend. And so I know many of you probably are not actively checking your, at least hopefully not actively checking your email over the weekend in the summer. But as one of the guidelines, it talks about music ensembles and how we're going to handle those for the fall. And so I did want to clarify, we are working with Prevea and Brown County Health. And so ensembles in their traditional form, whether that's vocal or whether that's instruments that require voice, like a trumpet, clarinet, we would not be able to keep those in their current form. So what we are doing is that we are asking our partner then in Prevea and Brown County Health to say, what can we do? So are there ways that we can accommodate this? Could we do individual lessons? Could we do small groups? And so we are working out the details. We are relying on our fabulous chair of music, Courtney Sherman, is going to come up with a proposal that we will then have Brown County Health and Prevea vet to make sure that we can do this safely. So this one is awaiting further guidance from them, but in their large form, that's right. We cannot have them, at that typical many people all together. So we're working on the specific details though. So definitely version 1.0 here.
Okay, the next question. While we are taking steps to prepare for a fall semester of alternative delivery and continued social distancing, the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families and the Department of Public Instruction have also recommended and implemented policies of reduced class sizes, shifted schedules, and other alternative formats. We also know the child care shortage continues. The difficulties arising from these changes will have a particularly devastating impact on those already disadvantaged. What is being done to address the potentially drastic impacts these changes in birth to 12 child care and education are likely to have on our parenting students, staff, and instructors as we begin the fall? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And obviously that's an issue that we are looking at. This is a societal problem that exists, and we are certainly going to look to see how UW Green Bay we can help to address it. I think one of the things that we're learning as we go through this is how to truly have empathy for everyone in the situation that they're in. And I think we're going to have to take each case one by one as things like this come up throughout the pandemic. And to be able to work with each faculty and staff member to understand their particular challenges and see if we can find ways to help them through it. So I can't give a specific answer on that because we don't yet have the ability. I can't lay out an entire plan right now on how we'll be able to do that. But I think there certainly, what we encourage everyone to do is to reach out to your supervisor, to HR, to anyone really that if you're experiencing some sort of challenge, just like we're telling our students, I would say the same thing to our faculty and staff. Please let us know. And so that we can help. If we don't know, it's difficult for us to be able to address the situation that you're feeling. But please, 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 if there are situations that you're unable to deal with, to let us know and see if there's a way that we can possibly try to help you. I will also say that even as we come back, and especially in July, but even as we move into the fall, the goal is not to have everyone on campus all the time. I want to emphasize that, right? It is in no one's best interest that everyone be here the way they used to be here in the past. I'm not sure that will ever change back, but certainly at the moment, we do not, if you're able to work from home and able to do your job effectively from home, please do that. And I think that's really important to understand. And, it may be a question now that you come in, for 3 or 4 hours in a day, or a couple hours in a day, or even a few minutes in a day, to get the job done you need to get done. But it may not mean that you're here the normal 8 hours that you would have been here in the past. And I know that doesn't solve the problem, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware that that's the case. So, okay, Sue?
You have indicated that masks are required inside the classroom. Well, what about outside the classroom? Between classes, the corridors, the tunnels, and areas immediately outside of the classroom entrances get very crowded. Shouldn't masks be required in any area of all university buildings, with a possible exception of a private office?
Yeah, so again, I know we have our guidelines set out for July and August. We have not set them out for the fall and how that will work. So we know, obviously, we're going to require masks. And I think these are things that we're working with Brown County, with Prevea, with Brian Merkel, with our staff, to make sure we're understanding the best policies and procedures we could put in place. But I think that the biggest issue that we could see is if you're unable to socially distance, it's really, really vital that you have a mask on. And obviously, if you're walking in a hallway in the middle of the fall, you're going to be required to wear a mask. It has to be that way. What we know right now is that's the safest thing we can all do for each other. So please make sure that you're wearing a mask. If you're in doubt, have it on. And I think that's really where we're looking to go. And we'll make sure that we have that fully clarified when we come out with our August guidelines.
Okay. This one, I was confused by the email we received regarding raises. Does the budget cut mean that we're not getting our 2% pay plan raise, or are you going to try to find funding from another area of the university so that we get our 2%?
Okay, so, and I apologize for the confusion here. I think I could have definitely written that first point better. So I apologize that appears it was unclear. Let me see if I could explain this the best way I can. So the money that we had for the January pay plan that happened in January 2020, the one that we just got, that's where the money has been pulled away. Okay, so we are going to continue to fund that pay increase, right? So that's where that $218,000 comes in. That was the amount of the pay increase. That is here. It's not going away. So the pay increase that you got in January will continue moving forward. That's not going away. The next step that we don't know is there's another piece of that pay plan that was supposed to happen in January 2021. There's supposed to be another 2%. We don't know if that money is going to come to us from the state or not. That is, it's unknown at this point. We've not heard it's not, but we also have not received confirmation that it definitely is. So we have to wait and see what happens from the state and from system, whether or not we get that money. If we don't, then we'll have to decide what to do there. But for right now, it's a decision we can't make just yet.
Have details of the voluntary separation program been worked out, and are employees stepping forward for it?
So I think I have to, the details are out, and I think I can say broadly that some employees have chosen to, at this point, to take that route, but I can't talk about how many. It's a confidentiality issues here that I need to make sure I follow. But yes, it has been rolled out, and some people have decided to take it.
Will there be regular testing of students and faculty, and if so, could you provide details of that testing?
Sure. So I can tell you what we know at this point. So first of all, that all students will have access to testing at all times. And so Prevea, that's part of our deal with Prevea. They'll get, if they're symptomatic, they're going to get I think within 3 or 4 hours, they'll have a response to their test. The way it will work with Prevea is if it's on their insurance, well, it'll get billed to their insurance. If they don't have any insurance, then they'll be given the test for free. So it's a really great program that Prevea is working with us on. That's how that will work for students. For faculty and staff right now, we would ask that you use your insurance to get the test. Again, if we could, if a situation arises that you need assistance from that, please let us know, and certainly we can work with Prevea to make sure you get the help that you need. That's where we stand right now. We are waiting for System. I know System is working on a broader response to this. So this is what we at UW Green Bay have just put in place on our own. We are waiting now for System to also layer that with the ways that they also may be able to help, but we don't have any information yet on how that's going to happen.
Okay. Given the confluence of concerns over the ways in which Americans are policed and the fact that the latest set of classroom guidelines include university police as a possible mechanism of enforcement for mask requirements, what steps are being taken to ensure that all members of the university community will be safe and well served by police in a setting where police may have additional enforcement contact with students in classrooms?
Yeah, so first of all, I would hope, I really, I can't imagine a situation where we would ever want to have an officer come in other than to make sure that things are safe in a classroom. It's not our intention, if someone is not wearing a mask, to have an officer run in to drag them out. I think what we're working on really, really hard is how to roll out a program to educate students on the importance of wearing that mask, right? That it's not a political issue, that it's an issue of social responsibility, right? That even if they don't believe in the mask, it's not relevant. What's important is that everyone feels safe in that classroom. And that's, we all have to have that social contract together. We are still working out in more details as to how, what would happen for some reason if someone does not come into a classroom wearing a mask or into a hallway or any of those kind of situations. We don't have all those details worked out yet, I can tell you that. So we're still having conversations about how that would work. I also can tell you that we're having many conversations with Chief Jones, with our police, to understand how we can move forward in a productive way. And I think that's, you know, we're really lucky to have a really forward-thinking police chief and great officers that work here at UW Green Bay. But we understand also that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to build trust. A lot of understanding needs to occur for us to be able to move forward together as one, as a campus. And we're going to start having those conversations as we get closer to the fall. We'll have some steps that'll be announced in the next couple of weeks, I hope, about ways that we'll begin those dialogues that are really important, that we have those dialogues amongst faculty and staff and our public safety and police officers prior to the beginning of school. So that's something we're discussing how to do. And then obviously once school starts in the fall, to make sure that we really have robust conversations and great communication to make sure that we are supporting all of our students and faculty and staff appropriately in that regard.
This question relates to contact tracing. What are the procedures and policies for notifying other students, staff, or faculty that they have been exposed to a person that tested positive for COVID on campus? And if a student, staff, or faculty is exposed to a COVID-infected person, either on campus or off campus, will self-quarantine be suggested or required?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So first of all, let me start by saying that right now, we're working with Brown County to do our contact tracing. Okay, so Brown County would do this for any coronavirus case that occurs in the county. And so we're working with them to make sure they would, obviously they're going to do the same thing for anything that occurs on our campus. So the protocols that Brown County has in place is what we would follow for how to make sure that everyone who's been in contact with someone that has developed the virus is notified. We're also working to make sure, and this is tricky, that we're both following HIPAA guidelines and also making sure that we're being safe and completely safe with if someone does test positive for the virus. And so I can't give any more details than that, I think, at the time, but we will certainly make sure that if someone tests positive, that anyone who's been exposed to that person is notified right away, and that the appropriate measures are taken for quarantine and everything else.
With so much attention rightly focused on mass and classroom capacity, what steps are being taken to evaluate our ventilation system and upgrade as needed?
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that, and so I think that's something that we could follow up on after this meeting. I know Paul Pinkston, I'm sure, could give us an answer to that as to what kind of ventilation we have in those rooms and where we might need work, but I don't know at the moment. So we'll certainly circle back after the fact to make sure that we've got an answer to that.
Okay. With the precautions in place for July and August, what are the plans for or changes for an in-person commencement on August 22nd?
Yeah, this is a great question, and one that frankly has me very nervous. So like all things that we keep discussing, we make plans with the information we have in front of us, and then sometimes the information changes. And so when that happens, we have to be willing to adjust. And right now, Gail and her team are working really hard to come up with all different contingency plans for what graduation could look like. And but frankly, if it's not safe, we won't do it. We're waiting to see what the options we have. Right now, we're looking at multiple ceremonies. So we could do as many as 3 or 4 ceremonies even, so that we could put fewer people in the space and see if we could get it down low enough where it could be safe. If that's not safe, then we'll look at other alternatives. But we're not going to do something. We're not going to hesitate. If it's unsafe, it is unsafe, and we'll just have to cancel and find another way.
Could you talk more about the permanent base budget cut to the university of $218,000 that we are facing related to the defunding of pay increases? What are the plans at this point to address that, since it is not a one-time cut?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the plans are that we're really lucky that we have a great business and finance team that is working through all the contingencies that they've worked through. Cheryl, Kate, and I and the cabinet, we're talking daily to make sure we understand how dynamic the budget situation is. Luckily, as I mentioned before, we're in a position where a $218,000 budget cut, while really painful, doesn't cause us to have to take any drastic measures. We've already put ourselves in a position where we can kind of absorb that. In other words, you're not going to feel it directly. Like, we're not going to have to come out and say we're making a cut to this because of that amount of money. I do want to say, though, and I think it's important to put in perspective here, right? So a 2.5% cut, a base cut to the university, is about $1.7 million. Okay, and so if you start adding that up, okay, then it starts to add up pretty quickly. And a $1.7 million cut is more difficult to deal with. That would be about a 2.5% cut. A 5% cut, you could do the math, right? And we're starting to get, up to 8 or 9, 10% if we get a cut that's being possibly talked about in the state right now. So we have to prepare for that. That's why we took all the steps that we've taken leading up to this point, right? If we take a 10% cut, a GPR cut, meaning just a cut to our base funding, right? That's in the millions of dollars. And again, we feel even if we took that big of a cut, that because we're trying to be as prudent as we can with our resources, that it would not mean that we would have to take drastic action instantaneously, right? It would mean that we can make sure that for a period of a year or two that we can make sure that we stabilize if we take something that bad. I also want to mention that in our reserves, if for some reason we took a 10% cut, that would give us in the neighborhood of a year, year and a half to 2 years max of the amount of money we have in reserve to be able to get through that. Okay, so I don't want to minimize that, right? That's literally how close we are, and again, we're in great shape relative to a lot of places. Okay, so the fact that we even have, if we took a 10% cut, that we have a year of reserves to be able to cover that, right, is really, really important right now, and why we're I guess you could say we're being conservative with how we're handling our funds, but I wouldn't view it that way. I would view it that we're taking the responsible actions right now, knowing what's coming ahead of us, to make sure that we don't put more jobs in jeopardy moving forward.
Starting July 1, will all campus doors be open or only certain ones?
Sorry, Sue, you said campus doors?
Will all campus doors be open or only certain ones?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think we're still waiting a little bit for July. We're less worried about this, I could say, because there'll be so much fewer people on campus. Like, we know there are not going to be very many people on campus on a given day, but I'm going to defer, and I'll ask maybe that we send an email out after this. And again, if Paul Pinkston's on the call, if not, we'll make sure we get these 2 questions, and we'll send an email out over the next day or so to make sure we clarify that about the doors.
Okay. Having a little technical difficulty here. Yeah, sorry, can't access the inbox right now. Can you guys, is there anything else you wanted to talk about for a sec?
I'm not sure if there's, Kate, anything that you want to add to what we've already discussed? Cheryl is also having technical difficulties, so she is like across the room from me holding up signs here as we go. So I apologize that Cheryl is not on the call, but but Kate, yeah, if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to also thank all the staff and faculty. I know that you all have been working incredibly hard. We've had a lot going on. I think as Mike said, we're really excited about this enrollment growth, but also trying to balance what the future might hold with everything. And I know there's a lot of uncertainty, so I appreciate everyone's flexibility as we're awaiting these guidelines and giving guidance as best we can and looking toward both our July return as well as the fall semester. So just wanted to thank everyone for all the great work that they've been doing.
All right,
happy
I'm back.
So
Perfect.
Sue, actually, before you ask this question, I should, and I apologize that I did not address this earlier, but I should also mention that we had some difficult news come out on Friday, I believe, that we had to unfortunately lay some people off in the Widener Center, and as all things, and this one in particular, it kind of hits at my core, and we are really as we mentioned several times throughout the last several months, this is one of those units, again, that relies on program revenue. And we have to protect the Widener Center to be able to move forward. And we know there will be limited outside activity coming into the Widener this year. And we have to make sure that we keep the Widener Center in a position where when the pandemic is over and things begin to open up again, that we can thrive. And so I feel awful about the steps we had to take but we know there are the responsible steps to make sure that the Widener can continue to move forward and support the community and the campus moving forward. And I think there's an opportunity here that I know that Kelly Strickland is working very hard in conjunction with a lot of people across campus on ways we can really imagine the Widener into the future in a way it can really be a conduit for us to connect to our community in ways we've never done before. And by that, I mean all of our community and large parts of our community that have never seen the Widener, never been to it, that we need to fix, that need to be an active part and be a regular visits to our campus for it to really serve our students in profound ways. I think also is really important that we have this gem on our campus and how often we have our own students, faculty, and staff using it. We need to really address and find a financially fiscally responsible way, I guess, to move forward in the Widener going ahead is really crucial. So I want to thank everyone at the Widener for their work and understanding. And again, I feel really awful about what we had to do to be able to help that happen. So sorry, Sue. I think
that's okay. Have you had the ability to interact with Interim UW System President Thompson at this point? Any comments or thoughts about how he will lead the system?
So I had my first meeting, not one-on-one with President Thompson, but I had a chancellor's meeting on Friday morning, and he spent the first hour to hour and a half with us on that meeting, and it was invigorating. And I'm quite excited about the energy he will bring, the vision he has for how to help the system, for how to support the campuses in dealing with the fiscal times that we're in building the legislative support that we need to move forward, in really taking a close look at what's happening at system and how to within the whole system and how to position us in the best possible way moving forward. It was a really positive meeting that we had on Friday. I'm also I know I wrote this in my email, but it was quite encouraging. He has connections in the health and human services world that are they're connections that are, I think, that can really help us as we move through the pandemic, and at both the state and federal level, where we've maybe struggled to get the support that we need at the federal level. He certainly has the connections to help us do that and position us properly moving forward. So I was quite pleased with the first meeting we had, and I'm very excited to work with him.
It's great to hear enrollments are strong. Where does the data show the demographics of the students? Do we see enrollments from local high schools, more commuters, etc.?
So we haven't begun to dissect that yet too much in this incoming class. And so we'll be anxious once we move closer into the fall, we'll start to have all those demographics in place and we can start to see that. My sense and my hope is that we will continue the trend that we've been on, where we are drawing more and more local students. And I think it's also important to note, I want to keep emphasizing this, that our enrollment growth this year is going to both be because we're recruiting really, really well, because especially the work that's happening on our locations also is unbelievable, the recruitment that's happening on our locations this year. And the work that is happening on those locations, again, I just want to say, it's inspiring to see. If you'd have told me last July when I got here that what's happening in Marinette, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan, that it was going to look like it looks right now, and how those campuses are moving forward and how we're starting to work together as one university with 4 campuses, I'm thrilled with it. And Cindy Bailey and Jamie Schramm and everybody who's worked with them to help make that happen, and Rachel, who I know is now working with us in missions, that's having a huge impact about how, about what that means for local recruitment. I also want to say that it's important to understand that through all that, what is going to really make the biggest difference this year is that we've retained close to around 400 additional students this year than we did the previous year. And I want to say that again. That's 400 additional students that we retained this year over what we retained last year. That's a staggering number. So when people talk about retention, they often hope for 1 or 2 or 3% max gain in retention numbers. If that 400 number holds true, we're talking about in the 7 to 8% change in the number of students that we've retained in a year. If we continue to do that, our enrollment will continue to grow. And it's not just that our enrollment will continue to grow, it's that we'll be doing the socially responsible and ethically responsible thing to do. We'll be bringing students onto our campus, and we'll be graduating them and providing them a great way forward in their careers. So I want to thank everyone for that. Those numbers, I think they're the most exciting numbers I've seen all year. Kate is doing an amazing job. Jen Jones, everyone who's working together, everyone in student affairs has a huge impact in that. The way that everybody works together with our students to keep them in school, it's appreciated.
Why have we not moved more classes to virtual scheduled class times as opposed to completely online where there is less faculty and student interaction? We know what makes UWGB great in an in-person environment. What are the talking points around convincing students to stay with UWGB in a virtual environment? And what is going to make it stand out?
Yeah, so I will tell you, it's been really interesting that Kate and Gail and I have been doing meetings with parents for the last, I guess, the last month or two now, and it's been amazing to hear the comments that the parents have made to us about how their students are understanding the alternative delivery of teaching, and it's obvious. I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way, maybe, but it's obvious when the professor cares. And I think by and large, that is the case with our professors, that they are willing to work with students when they're struggling. They're willing to go that extra mile to make sure a student has the support they need to be able to succeed in a class. And it's not just our professors, it's our staff that are working when a student is struggling to get them referred to the right place and have the right staff member work with them to help them keep them going in a class. I think that's one of the things that distinguishes us, is that, and I know everybody told me that when I got here, and I kind of nodded my head and yes, but I think, you know, it's one of our colors in the Carnegie Dartlet, the marketing thing that we did, and I'm going a bit astray here, but I think that's a really important thing, right? That we care, and that it's easy in an online environment, I think, to just look at it as a name on a screen. But there's a person behind that name, right? There's a person that you're working with, and I think that's when you're in person, it's easier because you have that connection. And to maintain that connection with the students that are in your classroom, I was really heartened to hear, we got many emails from students who said that they felt more engaged in an online classroom in the spring than they had ever felt throughout their time at UW Green Bay, right? That they felt they were able to contribute in ways they'd never felt they could contribute before. And so I want to thank all of our faculty for that work. Like that is I think that's the biggest thing that can distinguish us as we go forward. And then, frankly, you know, I think a lot about this, about what it means to have hardship, and I want to thank. I know everyone is doing extra work right now. I know that it's a lot of effort to put. To have to think about having all these multiple modalities, to not know for certain what's going to happen in the fall. Like I don't want to underestimate what those sacrifices are that you're making, but I will say that they're vital. That we simply have to understand that our obligation as an educational institution right now, it is what is keeping a lot of people afloat. It's what coming out of this pandemic is going to allow us to keep, to not have what's already catastrophic, equitable damage that's being done across our society and in our region. we have to make sure that the students who are in with us right now and the students who join us in the future can stay in school, can get out with a degree, and can go make a difference in our region. And I think I have to keep hearkening back to that we're going to do everything we can to support you in that regard, but to thank you. No matter what we do to support you, we know there's a ton of extra work that you're doing to make that happen. And I guess I could just say thank you for that. And sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. I should have Kate also weigh in there. So Kate, if you want to follow up there, that would be great.
Thanks, Mike. So I think the question really speaks to that struggle between the asynchronous and the synchronous modalities, and I think that that's something that many campuses are experiencing right now. I think what it also speaks to is that maybe a need for both, right? And so I think CADL came up with an excellent document talking about what it might look like to develop an asynchronous online core, and so having students be able to access that at any time, especially as we're working to think about accommodating students in the fall semester who might need to isolate and might not be able to attend class. It's important for us to have that, in addition to us being able to pivot, right? We might need to pivot at any point in the fall semester, depending on local health authorities. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared in order to do that. In terms of the synchronous piece, I know I talked with some students in May, and some students really talking about the value in that synchronous experience. I had one student say that that's what she looked forward to. That was what she had as her ability, her connection with campus, is to have that synchronous environment. So we do have the opportunity. We have virtual classroom, so that is a synchronous online modality. So that instructors can choose that as a modality. We're trying to balance, obviously, we have some technology. We do not have all the technology. We're using the CARES Act funding to be able to equip 20 classrooms to be able to be better equipped to have that sort of more flexible in terms of having a hybrid classroom. That's clearly not all of our classroom spaces, though. So we kind of have to balance the infrastructure we have with student needs. One other thing to keep in mind too is that we also want to be mindful of our students and their internet abilities, internet capacity. And so some students don't have that capacity to be able to stream a course, for an hour. And so thinking about potentially, having that asynchronous course as a result, maybe being judicious. If you're interested in synchronous, maybe that looks like synchronous office hours instead. So that way you still are having that real-time contact. So there can be some other ways that we can approach it. But I appreciate the question because it is definitely a hot topic right now.
Yeah, and just a quick, I don't know, I had a quick shout out here too that, the work that Kate is doing there's just a gargantuan task in front of everyone in academic affairs, and I very much appreciate both her leadership and all of everybody on the admin council and our deans, all the work, all of our department chairs that are doing really incredible work right now to be able to make really an impossible situation somewhat possible. And so it heartens me all the time to hear Kate talk about what we're doing to try our best to try to accommodate all these different students that have all these different needs and different ways they want to learn. Again, when that initial question of what are we doing to distinguish ourselves, that's part of what we're doing to distinguish ourselves, right? When students sign up for a class and it's not the class, the mode to which they initially wanted it, we're working with them. Our advisors are talking to them. It's that personal touch that's going to help us to keep moving forward, and the amount of care that is happening with Kate and her team and how to make that go is and the faculty working together with them is really exciting to me.
What do we do when students do not wear masks in the classroom? Who should we reach out to? I saw a staff member on campus not wearing masks and was worried about having to confront people.
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is one of my biggest concerns about how to move forward. And to be honest with you, we don't have an answer yet for that as to how we'll handle that. So we're still working on that in a lot of ways. I am fundamentally uncomfortable with a faculty member in a classroom having to deal with that situation on their own. That's not, it's not what they were hired to do. And so we have to keep working on a solution for what that will look like and how to deal with it. And we should have that over the next month. As I said, we'll make sure we have that very clearly stated, what will happen if someone doesn't have a mask on.
As a faculty member, can I wear my own supplied N95 or KN95 masks? The masks I own are not designated for medical use, but are much better than a cloth mask or a mask with clear portion over the mouth. I feel it's important for my own safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, not a problem at all.
A follow-up to the question on testing. Can faculty and staff have a COVID test on campus at the University Health Center? And can we have a test if we are asymptomatic?
Okay, so there are two separate questions here, and I'll do my best to answer those. So we don't right now for faculty and staff. We would ask that you use your insurance to get that test. However, as I mentioned, I know one of the goals of System is to be able to provide testing for all of our faculty and staff on our campuses, but we don't have that yet. If for some reason you feel you cannot get a test and you have symptoms, please let us know. Let Amy Hanegas know, I think would be the right person right away, or to let any of us know that you have this problem, and we'll obviously work to make sure we can get that solved. The asymptomatic testing is something that is I don't know if there's complete agreement on, or I think there's probably agreement on it, but there's still many different answers I'm getting, that we're all getting, about the best way to treat that. And obviously we know that the more testing we can do, the better. The question is how often, to who, how do we pay for it, who's providing it. There's a lot of questions we still have to solve on that over the next month. The asymptomatic testing, my understanding is, that what it does is it gives you an understanding of the percentage of people on your campus that are testing positive, like per X number of tests, right? And so it starts to show you if there's an increase that's occurring. And so like sort of testing cohorts to see if there's a possibility that a breakout is occurring. And I think that's where we want to be really conscious that we're working together with System, with Brown County Health, with Prevea, to understand what that looks like moving forward. And over the next month, we should have a good answer for that.
Okay. Saturday, we received an email with a document that details guidelines for the classroom. Today, it sounds like the guidelines for the school year have not yet been determined. Can you please clarify if these classroom guidelines are set in stone or if these guidelines are not official and may change?
So I'll flip this over to Kate in 1 second, but just broadly, I think it's important that the main reason we had to send this out, and Kate had to send this out, is because we had to clarify the modes with which we were getting all of our classes to go. Anything is subject to change at any time, because if the pandemic shifts, we have to be ready to shift for it. But Kate, if you want to expound on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. We sent those out right now because this is our understanding as of now. And so we wanted faculty to be able to have a better sense of what the fall would look like. The registrar's office is doing a ton of work right now to make sure that our fall schedule represents what's going to happen in terms of the physical distance measures that we have to have in place. And so we want faculty to be able to have a sense of what that looks like so they can make those decisions. And if we need to make any changes, we could do those as soon as we can so that we can better reflect that schedule to students then for what that will look like. But as Mike said, this is the first version. Things will continue to evolve as we get guidance from Prevea and Brown County Health and as local health conditions permit.
If someone is exposed to or contacts COVID-19, will COVID-19 leave be available, or will a faculty or staff member need to use sick leave or other form of leave to quarantine or potentially to hospitalize?
So I think that's another great question. I think I need to make sure I go back with HR after this, and I think it looks like there's 3 things now that we'll follow up with an email afterward, and make sure that we have the exact right answer on that. I apologize that I don't have the exact answer for that.
Okay. Will the bookstore, sports center, and/or food operations be open?
Okay, so let me make sure I take those one at a time. So the bookstore, that I know we're working on that now with the bookstore as to if it opens, what it would look like, how we'd make sure there's social distancing and other things we need to do to make sure that is safe. There are other ways, I think, if it can't open, that we would be able to make sure that we can get books out. I think they could be mailed and otherwise. So I think there's options there. The rec center was the second, Sue, is that right?
Yep.
So the rec center, I know that Jeff and Matt are working very hard on that, and more to come on how the rec center, if it opens and how it opens. We're working on that also with our athletics program to make sure that all that is being done safely. And the third was
Food operations.
Food operations. Yep. So and Gail, again, Gail Sims-Albert doing a great job there to make sure that we have all of our food operations working safely. What will open, what won't open, and more details on that to come as well. We do know we have options, I should say, certainly for our students, right? So, how that will work, they're still working out all the details, but to be able to have meals delivered, to make sure that the dining rooms are safe, all those sorts of things that they're making great progress on.
Okay. What, if any, decisions have been made about a return to campus housing? Secondly, will students have the ability to opt out of their housing contracts if all of their classes turn out to have moved online? If students choose not to return to the Green Bay area, this may have implications for practicums, internships, etc., that have been established locally and may need to shift.
Right. Okay. Also, great question. So, housing, we actually have a waiting list right now for housing. And so we do understand that it's possible that some students may decide as a result of having their classes online that they'd rather stay at home. At the moment, I know that Gail is working with certain students. In some cases, we may have to even encourage some students to stay home to make sure that we can get all of our incoming students a dorm room. And so that's one piece of that. The other piece of that was having to do with practicums, right? And I think this is, again, where we're just going to have to ask our faculty and staff to be as flexible as possible, right? That for all of the plans we can make, and we're making them as fast as we can and as well as we can, there are just going to be some things that might shift, right? And we're going to have to work together and work with the students to make sure they don't suffer in the process. And I think, I appreciate your flexibility on that, should that arise.
What are the expectations for course coverage of other instructors' courses should instructors fall ill and not be physically able to continue teaching their courses for some duration of time, even online?
So I know we have a normal policy for that we follow throughout times, and Kate, I don't know if you want to expand on that, but
I think we definitely will want to have some contingency plans in place. So I know that the deans and chairs have been looking at that in the spring semester. So that's something that we would want to have in place for the fall semester as well. I think that also raises the issue of why it's really important for us to think about that asynchronous online core and to encourage you to, if you haven't had a chance already, to sign up for the professional development with CATL this summer, to be able to have that. I think it's a great preparation both on the student accommodation side as well as on the faculty accommodation side.
Okay. I understand the process is underway to decide what modes fall courses will be offered in. Is there a timeline we can tell students they will be informed of these necessary changes so they can adjust their schedules accordingly?
Go ahead, Kate.
That's a great question. So our plan for right now is we are aiming for mid-July to be able to have those changes in place. As I said, we might have to make changes depending on what happens, but that's why we also wanted to send the guidelines out right now so that both instructors could make that choice as well as students to be able to see what their schedule would look like for the fall. So that's our current plan, is mid-July.
And if I could just add, everyone, to please understand that if a student reaches out to you and says, "I'm upset that my class is online or in person," that we have students on both sides actually contacting us and saying that they want all their classes online or they want them all in person, and they're upset, regardless of what that mix is. Please, please, please make sure that you refer them. If you can't handle the question yourself, to please make sure you refer them. We don't want them to just stop, right? We want them to understand why and how we're going to keep them going. There may be other options for other classes they could take that make them more comfortable, to work with our advisors and to work to make sure that we're keeping them engaged as best as possible.
Given that classes are being placed in tiers 1, 2, and 3 based on needs and class size, we are probably not looking at what those choices mean at the individual student level. What do we expect to be the implications for students in making decisions about returning to campus, either as a residential student or a student in general? For example, if a first-year student finds out that their only in-person class will be their first-year seminar, what would be their incentive to pay to live in a residence hall on campus? What impact do you think finding out their final schedules and their modalities will have on enrollment numbers?
All right, it's a great question, and I'll start, and then Kate, if you want to add anything, then please do. But yeah, we're aware of the implications, and I want to go back to where we started, way back in March, which is that we're going to make every decision first and foremost based on the health and safety of our faculty, staff, and students, and we have to make sure that is core to what we do. That if a student is unhappy with the delivery mode that we have to provide the class in, I could live with that complaint. We don't want to live with the alternative, that we've made a poor choice that caused someone to get sick or worse. And so we need to work with our students individually on these things. And you're right, it's very possible that we will lose revenue as a result of students saying, I no longer want to live on the dorms. What I don't want to have happen, and I think none of us want to have happen, is that students stop their education, right? And that, to me, would be, that's a bad loss if that happens. That we want to make sure that they're continuing their education in some form, that they stay engaged in some way, so that they're able to continue on in school. So, Kate, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, but.
I'll just say a couple of the logistical pieces there. So we've been referring students to reach out to GBOS if they have any concerns about their schedule and what that might look like. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you to GBOS for all of the work. We wouldn't have been able to do all of this without you. I mean, from emergency grants to students not having hotspots, just been a great resource to be able to give students those next steps and what they should do. The other piece I just wanted to say in terms of the housing, so Gail and her team are being very flexible with housing. So if a student was looking to get out of their housing contract because they were taking all online courses, they would be able to do so. So it's good that we have that flexibility in place.
And that is the end of our questions.
Wow. Okay, that's almost we almost timed that to the minute there. We're 3 minutes off. So I do want to just conclude by thanking everyone again. I know it's weird to do these online, but it's awfully nice to be able to have a discussion with everybody and hopefully help to clarify as best we can what's going on. And I think one of the best things I've heard is that I know it's uncomfortable, but to please do our best to embrace the unknown for the moment. That's really the best thing we can do, is just to understand that flexibility is going to be another one of our greatest strengths we can have, our resilience to go back again. And I want to conclude. I'm very excited. I don't know if you all noticed the image when you came in. It's one of our new marketing images, and I want to take a second to thank our marketing University Communications team. You're going to see a massive shift in how we are looking coming into the fall. It's very exciting to me, and thank you. That's one of the initial images. They're going to get even better than that, and that one's pretty great. But we're really looking to really show what makes Green Bay special, and distinguish ourselves and distinguish the work that you do, because it is distinguished. I want to thank Jen and her team for doing that, to get that, to start creating these new images, and and lots of other things that we're doing to really how we could portray the campus, I think, in a way that accurately reflects the work that we're doing and that we're trying to accomplish. So please stay well. It's great again to be with you this morning, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all soon, and have a great rest of your week. So thanks.
Thank you.